Hello.
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 And welcome to the Twyford Health Club.
Twyford Health Club.
Twyford Health Club podcast.
Welcome to the March edition of the Twyford Health Club podcast, and with the race just days away, it's time for another Reading Half Marathon special. You're going to hear from the gym's personal trainers, Barry, Jodie, George and Lewis, all of whom will be taking part in this year's event, and they're going to share their advice on how to polish off your preparations. They'll also be giving tips on how to approach the race day itself, things like nutrition, tactics and even logistics. All this, plus they share their thoughts on the Reading Half Marathon experience. The Reading Half Marathon gets away at 10:15 on Sunday the 19th of March, and I expect you know that already. But if you've never run a half before, or indeed the Reading course, there are probably quite a few other things that you don't know. Jodie and George both ran it last year, and this year they're going to be doing it again. Here they are with their thoughts on the race, their do's and don'ts, and hints that will be handy for any competitor.
The week of the race, I took everything down. I did my last long race the week before, and then I just relaxed for that week and give my body a break, so I was fresh for the race. Even on the classes, I wasn't doing spin. I would have done it off the bike and things like that, just to give my body that break, so I felt really good on the day of the race. And to be honest, it worked 100%, because on that day I felt really good and refreshed. If you're running long races all the way up to the day of the race, you're going to tire yourself out. You're going to exercise and you're going to feel really tired, and your legs are going to be tired.
So running the half marathon was a great experience, especially on the Reading event. It's a really good environment, really good race, a good course as well to do, especially if you're first getting into your half marathons. This is not a particularly hilly course, but the whole experience is great fun. Really good fun. When I went into it the first time, I was by no means a runner. I started off doing 4k runs, 5k runs, and then kind of built my way up to when I did the race. And the environment is brilliant. It's a great environment. Everyone's pushing. Everyone's very positive while you're there. It's a great experience to have. I'd recommend it to everyone. Again, especially that Reading course is a really good one.
Something you need to think about is how you're going to get there. So my advice to people would be, make sure you're organised. So make sure you know what trains you're getting if you're getting the train. Check the traffic if you're getting, because the parking is absolutely horrendous on the day. So try and get there a little bit early. Just make sure you know what you're doing on that morning, so you avoid any delays, because you obviously need to be on the starting line. You've got to pop your bags in, you've got to get your numbers and things like that. So you do need that extra time at the beginning. I went with a colleague and we got the train there. It was quite relaxed, and the train station do put on a bus to get you to the starting line. So what I would do is be organised. So go on the internet or phone the train stations, bus stations, and find out your journey in advance. Always do it in advance. You know exactly where you're doing, what time you're supposed to be there, because you do need to be there a little bit early, especially if you need to collect numbers, you need to put bags in to the safe hold and things like that. So it all is organisation.
On the race day, I made a very big error in terms of my pacing. So you really want to keep a consistent pace while you're running. You don't go fast for a while, slow down, fast, slow, fast, slow. You want to find a good, comfortable pace, and you want to sit into that pace pretty much the duration of your race. What I did was I started off at an alright pace, and I thought I'd messed up my time, so I set off way too fast. Kind of thought, I've got to bring back this time, pushed myself way too hard. Got to halfway and was doing an alright time, which, was feeling okay. But when I got to that last quarter of the race, I was spent. I was really spent, because I emptied out so much early on. And again, it was an error in terms of my pacing, because there's no such thing as free energy. If I empty out early on in that race, I'm not going to have that in the second half of it. In the same way, if you ease off on that first half of the race, you're going to have more for your second half. So that was mine error when I did the race, was my pacing was off. I was varying between speeds too much, and it really I really felt it as I came into the last quarter of the race.
Do not wind yourself up. It's about fun. At the end of the day, it's all about enjoying yourself. So there's no point putting pressure on yourself or worrying or being nervous. Just take your time, relax and enjoy the atmosphere. The atmosphere on the day is amazing, and if you're too wound up, you're going to miss all that. You really need to take that all in, and then you'll probably continue to do races because you enjoy it that much.
Barry is Twyford Health Club's most experienced half-marathon runner, and he's taken on the Reading course on many occasions. Here's his advice on how to maximise your performance, with what to do on the week of the race day itself, and some advice for when you take on Reading's hills.
The week of the race, it's very important to realise that recovery has now become more important than training benefit. So when you have race week, if you're going out and you're training more and you're trying to get some extra in, it's a bad idea. You need to be stronger and more recovered during that week than you've been through the rest of your training. Things like Pilates to keep you stretched out, and just coming into the gym and doing some light exercise to keep moving is a really, really good idea. But do not try and pack in extra training at the end, because that is the point where people often pick up injuries when they should be recovering. So food-wise, I'll give you some advice on when you're actually running. It's all trial and error. So if you go running and you think, do you know what? I feel pretty good during this. I don't need to eat anything. That's fine. You can stay with that. But do not wait until race day to try your first gel or your first caffeine boost, because there have been many, many people who have fallen victim to that partway through the race and they end up in the bushes going to the loo. I've seen it. I've seen people who didn't even get to the bushes on time. So make sure that you do not have gels unless you've practiced with them, or any other food that you're planning to take when you're running. On the race day itself, you want to know that if I eat breakfast at this time, I will go to the toilet at this time. You don't want to be caught short. You want it to be routine. So you want to know that when you're setting off to race at 10 a.m. in the morning, you feel sufficiently fueled and you feel sufficiently emptied at the same time. You don't want to be caught short during it. And now when you start the race, it is very important not to get caught up in the atmosphere. Otherwise, you'll do what we call in the trade a fly and die. You do not want to go off like a rocket and then find that you just pop part way through. But you do want to remember that everything that you've done, all the weeks of training, all the time you've got up in the morning, you've run out in the rain, you've been stretching in the gym, out working out those sore muscles, you remember that it's all for that one point. So when it comes to race day, you're not training anymore, you are racing. So you just have to be mature about it. Don't go off too hard, but do go off and challenge yourself. Push yourself. Pick somebody that you think, I'm not going to let that person get away from me. And then just stay behind them, nice and steady. Don't go too fast. As I say, don't fly and die. But remember that this is everything that you've been training for. And as you go around that route, you'll see all the people that you're inspiring. There'll be people shouting out their windows. There'll be people playing music on the side. And then when you come to the end, you'll be running into that stadium and the roar of the crowd is enormous, and it all makes it worth doing. So all of your training, from getting off the Christmas pies to that final moment, comes down to this one day. So I suppose what I'm saying is, you need to back yourself. You need to believe that actually I've done enough now, and now I'm going to go out and I'm going to enjoy it. The atmosphere is fantastic. Reading Half Marathon, of all the half marathons I've done that one the most because the atmosphere is absolutely brilliant. There's a couple of little hills, nothing too bad, but the nice thing is by the time you get to the last 5k, you start to run downhill quite a bit. So as long as you can hang on to that point, it starts to get a lot easier in the final stages. So one thing to bear in mind, when you hit the hills, you'll see a lot of people who'll put their head down, they'll dig in and they'll push to the top of the hill. And then when they get to the top of the hill, they walk, which is the exact wrong way round. Because when you're already going slowly uphill, why not use the moment when you're going slowest anyway to walk? So if you hit the hills and you're really struggling, just try to get to halfway, walk the rest, and then when you get to the top, run again. And just take note of who's around you and who pushed all the way to the top. And I can pretty much guarantee you that within about a minute, you'll overtake them. Because while they're working really hard for no return, you'll be walking because you don't get much return at that time anyway. Then when you get to the top, you pick back up to running again, you're rested and you go much faster. It's a far more efficient way to attack a hill.
Now, Barry briefly touched on what to eat during the race day there, but for some more details, here's Lewis Giles. He's not only a personal trainer at the gym, but also a nutrition expert. First up, he talks about what to eat the week of the race.
Leading up to any sort of endurance-based event, a lot of people will start in sort of the week previous to it. They'll start decreasing their training load and start increasing their carbohydrate intake. This is just to get the body ready for the event, keep fuel supply nice and high. If you're sort of new to running a marathon, then it's more just making sure your calorie intake's high enough. But if you're a seasoned athlete, then your more advanced strategies like carb loading are going to be hugely beneficial to help improve your performance. Carb loading the week leading up, you're sort of slowly increasing your carbohydrate intake in the days previous. So you may decrease your protein and fats, you're not going hugely over your calories. So you're just sort of playing around with the foods you're eating. So you might start eating more rice, pasta, potatoes. You might stop eating lots of meats and things like that, just decreasing it slightly, not altogether, but just slightly. So it will help store up a lot more energy that your body can then use for your running event. So on the day of the race, there are some things that you can do before the race and during. First thing I'd say is to practice your race day nutrition on a separate day so you know you're going to be comfortable eating those foods. Because the last thing you want to do is eat something that then gives you a dodgy stomach or something along those lines, because that's bound to ruin your race. I mean, it can be hugely personalised, but I think oats are always a good one, slow releasing energy. You want to make sure that you've got a protein source in there as well. So obviously it's quite important to make sure that you're fueling yourself while you're running. I mean, if you're doing anything more than sort of 60 or 90 minutes, having some sort of energy gel, some sort of sports drink will be beneficial to help replenish your electrolyte levels in the body. If you've got one of these gels or sports drinks, you'll definitely feel the difference when you're running, be it psychologically and physiologically.
Finally then, best of luck if you're taking part in the Reading Half Marathon. Of course, much of this advice is pertinent to all kinds of endurance events. And remember, if you're thinking of taking on a running challenge, download the January edition of this podcast for training tips. But the last word goes to Barry. He's got something he wants you to remember when you just don't think you can take any more.
So, when I was rowing years and years ago, somebody gave me the example of how capable people are of pushing themselves. Because when you start to get in pain, the natural reaction is to try and back off, try and save yourself a bit. But if you think about the deep sea divers, when they set off, after a minute, their body starts screaming at them. They're saying, breathe, breathe, breathe. They go through that stage, so the body screaming even louder, you must breathe, you must breathe. But then they push further and they push further. And bearing in mind, after 1 minute they've wanted to come up for air, they can be down there for 7 minutes plus to keep going through the pain barrier, and it just shows you how capable you can actually be if you can push through the pain. I'm not saying to do that at the beginning of the half marathon, but when it starts to bite at the end, just think about what those guys do and keep pushing through.